What are the big themes that you explore that are appealing to people?
The basic theme I explored that was the source of me getting a following on Quillette, my podcast ballooning in success during 2020, was that I really think your race and your skin color should not matter in 99% of cases. I think it doesn't matter. It's superficial, and what matters is our common humanity. And the
response to for a lot of people, I think, which you've probably heard a million times, is, well, I certainly would want it to be that way, but is it that way? ? And then people would be like, no, so we have to do X, Y.
If your reply to race doesn't matter is, well, the racists disagree, you're kind of proving my point, which is the people who make race matter, the people to whom race is important, are wrong. So we shouldn't fight them by agreeing with their basic premise. We should fight them by rejecting their premise. And too many people have decided the right way to fight racism is essentially to agree about the underlying racial essentialism. Blackness and whiteness are really real things. They're really very important. They're core parts of my identity. You can't really understand me unless you understand how the color of my skin is an intrinsic feature of who I am, a deep feature of who I am, that separates and divides us such that you can't really, there's some incommunicable barrier between us, and we should organize our politics around these variables. People have decided that that's the only way or the best way to respond to white supremacy and racism and the alt-right and so forth. And, I reject that. I reject that approach. I believe that, what used to be called color-blindness is really the only philosophically sound approach to have towards race. And I don't mean pretending not to see race, right? Like there's the...
I'm clearly Asian.
Yes, you're clearly Asian. I'm clearly not. The comedian Dov Davidoff has this joke where he's like, I met this woman the other day who said she doesn't see race. And I thought, good luck describing your attacker.
That's
like,
rough.
Just tell the police to look for a man with a frown. It was like, the point is, obviously, everyone sees race, right? So that pat phrase, I don't see race, is false and misleading. But what people, the charitable interpretation of that is, I strive to be a person that does not let race influence my considered decisions. And that's the world that I want to create. I want to create a world where people think about race less and less and less. And the people who do obsess about race are more and more ostracized from the mainstream corridors of power.
Well, this is a very interesting counter to racism. The tagline for my presidential campaign was humanity first. So you can imagine, this is the world that I want, the world where folks don't use race as a factor in the way they treat people, the way they respond to situations. So you've heard all of the counter arguments, I'm sure, and I don't want to be the person who belabors them.
I'm currently writing a book where I examine every counter argument that's out there.
It's my perspective on this is a little different than yours, though. Again, I think we're aligned. So I grew up in a majority white suburb, and in upstate New York, probably not as diverse as Montclair. It's one of the only Asian kids, and so I got picked on for being different. Pretty much anyone who wasn't a white kid got picked on for being different. And I think that the culture has shifted in ways where I look at my boys. I'm a dad now. I've got two little Asian boys, 9 and 6. And I look at them, I'm like, are they going to experience the same sort of thing? And right now it doesn't seem like it, at least maybe not in the same way, certainly that my brother and I did. And so my feeling on this is that that tribalism exists sort of baked into human nature.
Yeah.
And our goal should be, to your point, one, accept that a certain level of tribalism exists. Don't pretend that, you look at someone and be like, oh, I don't see that you're like a different race. And then you try and counter the corrosive, evil effects of that tribalism in different ways. And I agree with you that the appeal to universalism is a better working appeal than reinforcing tribalism in different respects. So I think everything I said doesn't disagree with you.
Yeah, I mean, no, some level of tribalism is inevitable. And not only that, I would even concede that there are certain times where tribalism is a good thing, or it's the only way to get people to go so far above and beyond to help their fellow man. So like realistically, there have been times where, Jews were fleeing persecution in one part of the world, and they could find refuge with Jews that were total strangers to them in a different part of the world that would take them into their homes, right? And that's a kind of altruism that is tough to get people to do absent tribalism, actually. It's like they accepted Jews from a totally different part of the world just because they were part of the tribe. And that so I would even carve out some unique instances where tribalism is the only plausible way of getting people to just be super altruistic to people who would otherwise be total strangers. But in most cases, tribalism divides far more than it brings people together. And it creates all of these inevitable resentments when you put race into policy, right? Like when Biden puts into his restaurant relief COVID policy that he's going to put to the front of the line restaurants that are owned by people of color, regardless of the individual needs of sort of the struggling restaurants. That creates an understandable resentment in a white restaurant owner who's struggling, who knows all the specifics of situation, how hard he or she is working, may even employ mostly people of color. I know examples like this, and it's like I'm being put at the back of this line on something that is really, it's well-meaning, but it's harming me for a reason that I can't control. At the end of the day, I don't think you can ever ask people to pay for arbitrary characteristics that they were born into. It will always create resentment no matter how you justify it. So we have to get to some equilibrium where we can seriously focus on, intergenerational poverty, neighborhoods that are stuck in intergenerational poverty with high crime rates, and invest heavily in that as an independent problem, but really create and foster a colorblind general legal and political foundation.
When I think about racism, I think about the fact that economic opportunity and educational opportunity are vastly uneven. I think the average black household has something like 10% the net worth of the average white household. And so I think of it more in terms of the economic disparities and the realities than I do like the way individuals treat each other. And I was with a black person when I was running for president, and that person was like, look, I don't care if like everyone loves me. I just want my schools to be better or whatever it is.
Right. I mean, that was really the attitude of all the great civil rights leaders we look back on and admire, like Dr. King and Bayard Rustin, and they all, I mean, as compelling as Martin Luther King was in terms of actually getting white Americans that were on the fence to support the civil rights movement and to want to bring black people into the American fold, they were not at the end of the day focused on getting all white people to like them, right? Like they understood they had a very hard-headed approach that you don't have to like me, but you do have to
do my shit.
Yeah, you do have to let me be free, right? You have to let me participate.
I want you to change this and change that, and like, you know, how you feel about me afterwards is less relevant.
Yes. So I mean, the truth is, there's always going to be bigots in the world, always. And you know, over time, I think the amount of bigots has actually reduced somewhat as ideas have changed, as people have met, as people from different races and ethnic groups meet each other and mingle, but it's never going to go away, ever. It's like, and people have a totally, implicitly they have an unrealistic attitude to this, which is like, for instance, no one expects the murder rate to ever be zero. Even in like these Western European countries that we look to that have far less violence than we do.
And are more homogeneous than we are.
Yeah, and are more homogeneous than we are and have very different circumstances. But even there, no one expects to have a murder rate of literal zero, right? Like there's always going to be a guy that finds out his wife has been cheating and like murders the other guy. And you can't fully prevent it, nor do we have that benchmark, like a literal zero benchmark for success. And bigotry is the same way. You can't fully purify the human mind.